Lance. The alien warship descended through the crimson clouds of Dust Ridge, its hull scorched black from atmospheric entry. Inside the cramped escape pod, Kalara gripped the control panel as warning lights flashed across her violet skin. Lance. Her home planet was ash. Her people were scattered across a dozen systems. Lance. And now her pod was failing, plummeting toward this backwater human colony that barely registered on galactic charts. The impact threw her against the restraints hard enough to crack 2 ribs. Pain lanced through her chest as the pod settled into a crater of red dirt. Through the cracked viewport, she saw an impossible landscape. Lance. Rolling plains stretched toward distant mesas under a sky too blue to be real, and walking toward her crash site was a human male, broad-shouldered and unhurried, leading a 4-legged creature she recognized from the database as a horse. Jake Morrison had seen plenty of strange things in his 15 years working the outer colonies, but a Valorian escape pod wasn't one of them. He approached with his plasma rifle lowered but ready. Lance. The Valorians were supposed to be extinct. The Krell Empire had made sure of that 3 months ago, broadcasting the destruction of their homeworld across every comm channel in the sector. Lance. The hatch hissed open and she stumbled out, falling to her knees in the dust. Her uniform was shredded, revealing silver scars across her shoulders and arms. Lance. When she looked up at him, her eyes were the color of Earth's oceans, impossibly bright against her purple skin. "Please," she said in accented standard. "Lance. I need sanctuary. I can work. Lance. I can fight. I can bear children if that's the price." Lance. Jake lowered his rifle completely. "Ma'am, we don't trade in people here." Lance. "Can you stand?" She tried and failed, her legs buckling. He caught her before she hit the ground again, surprised by how light she was, despite her height. Lance. Up close, he could see the exhaustion carved into her features, the way her hands trembled. "How many are following you?" he asked. Lance. "None. I'm alone." Lance. "My ship was destroyed over the scattered belt. I ejected before the reactor breached." "Krell?" Her expression hardened. Always the Krell. He shifted her weight, getting a better grip. "Lance, my ranch is 2 miles east. Can you hold on that long?" "I can endure." "I'm sure you can." Lance. "But I'm asking if you need medical attention right now or if it can wait 2 hours. She blinked at him, clearly not expecting the question. Lance. "It can wait." Jake whistled, and his horse trotted over. With practiced efficiency, he got Kalara into the saddle and swung up behind her. Lance. She stiffened as his arms came around her to grip the reins. "Relax," he said. Lance. "Thunder's gentle. Won't throw you." Lance. They rode in silence for the first mile. The sun beat down on the red plains, and in the distance, the settlement of Copper Springs shimmered like a mirage. Kalara's breathing gradually steadied, though Jake could feel the tension in her spine. "Why did you say that?" he asked finally. Lance. "About bearing children. It's the Valorian way. When we seek protection, we offer what we have." Lance. "I have nothing left but myself. That's not how humans do things out here." Lance. "You work, you earn your keep. Simple as that." Glance. She turned slightly to look at him, wincing at the movement. "You would shelter me without demanding anything? I'd shelter you because it's the right thing to do." Glance. "Everything else we can figure out after you've healed." For the first time since the crash, something like hope flickered across her face. Lance. What is this place? Dust Ridge. Colony world, barely registered. Lance, we ranch, we mine, we keep to ourselves. Galactic politics don't reach out this far most days. Lance, they will now. The Krell are hunting survivors. Then I guess we'd better make sure they don't find you. The ranch came into view as they crested a low hill. It wasn't much, just a main house built from local stone, a barn and a series of enclosures where Jake kept his livestock, plants. But to Clara, after weeks of running and hiding, it looked like salvation. Jake helped her down from the saddle and supported her as they walked to the house. Inside, he settled her on a worn couch and went to grab his medical kit. "I've got basic field supplies," he said, returning with a battered case. "Lance, but if those ribs are broken, you'll need a proper doctor. I heal faster than humans. The ribs will knit in 3 days." He raised an eyebrow but didn't argue. "Lance, at least let me clean those cuts." As he worked, Clara studied him. His hands were steady, his touch clinical but gentle. Lance. He was younger than she'd first thought, maybe 30 standard years, with sun-weathered skin and dark hair that fell across his forehead. "Why are you alone out here?" she asked. Lance could ask you the same thing. "My reasons are clear. Genocide tends to scatter populations." He paused, meeting her eyes. "Lance, I'm sorry about your people. Truly." "Lance, are you?" "Humans and Valorians have never been allies." "Lance, maybe not in the core systems, but out here we judge people by their actions, not their species." Part 2 begins now. Clara woke to the smell of something burning. She shot upright on the couch, instantly regretting the movement as her ribs screamed in protest. Lance. Through the kitchen doorway, she could see Jake standing over a stove, cursing softly as smoke billowed from a pan. "I'm making breakfast," he called without turning around. "Lance, or trying to. Hope you like your eggs extra crispy." She stood carefully, wrapping the blanket he'd given her around her shoulders. "Lance, the house was simple but clean, with furniture that looked handmade, and windows that framed the endless red plains." Lance. On the walls hung photographs of humans, some in military uniforms, others in casual clothing that seemed designed for this harsh environment. "You live alone?" she observed, stepping into the kitchen. "Lance, been that way for 5 years. After my folks passed, didn't see much point in leaving." "Lance, no mate? No offspring?" He scraped the blackened eggs onto 2 plates. "Lance, out here. Finding a partner isn't as easy as the recruitment vids make it seem. Most folks who come to Dust Ridge are running from something or looking for something they can't find anywhere else." Lance. "Which are you?" "Both, I suppose." He handed her a plate and a fork. "Eat, Lance. You need your strength." The food was terrible, but Clara ate anyway. She'd survived on emergency rations for weeks, and even burned eggs tasted like luxury. As they ate, Jake explained the basics of ranch life. Lance. He raised cattle, genetically modified creatures that could survive on Dust Ridge's sparse vegetation. He also grew what crops he could in hydroponic greenhouses behind the main house. "Lance, it's not glamorous," he admitted, "but it's honest work, Lance, and it's mine." A beeping sound interrupted them. Jake's expression darkened as he checked a handheld device. "Lance, motion sensors on the north perimeter. Could be nothing, but I'd better check." "Lance, I'm coming with you. You can barely walk. I can shoot." She stood, swaying slightly. "If it's the Krell, you'll need backup." He studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Lance, rifles in the hall closet. Don't shoot unless I give the word. Lance. They took his ground vehicle, a battered hover truck that had seen better decades. Kalara clutched the rifle, her fingers finding the familiar weight and balance despite it being human-made. Lance. The north perimeter was 20 minutes away, marked by a line of sensor posts that Jake had installed himself. What they found wasn't Krell. Lance. 3 humans stood beside a disabled transport, their clothing marked with the insignia of the Galactic Mining Consortium. One of them, a woman with short red hair, raised her hands as Jake approached. Lance. We're not looking for trouble, she said. Transport broke down. Lance. We just need to call for a Tau. Jake kept his distance. Mining Consortium doesn't usually operate this far out. We're surveying. Lance. Looking for new deposits. Her eyes flicked to Kalara, widening slightly. That's a Valorian. She's under my protection. The woman's expression shifted to something calculating. Lance. You know there's a bounty, right? Krell Empire is offering 10,000 credits for any Valorian, alive or dead. Glance. Kalara's grip tightened on the rifle. Jake's voice went cold. Lance. Not interested. That's a lot of credits to pass up. Could buy yourself a real nice spread. Lance. New equipment. Maybe even get off this dust ball. Lance. I said, I'm not interested. Now I can call you a tow, or you can start walking. Lance. Your choice. One of the other miners, a tall man with a scarred face, stepped forward. Lance. You're making a mistake, rancher. Harboring fugitives is a crime. So is threatening folks on their own land. Jake's hand moved to his sidearm. Lance. We done here? The standoff lasted 5 heartbeats. Then the red-haired woman nodded slowly. Lance. We're done. For now. Lance. But word's going to spread. You keep that thing on your property, you're going to have visitors. Lance. Not all of them as friendly as us. They called the tow and waited in tense silence until it arrived. Lance. As the mining crew departed, Kalara turned to Jake. You should have let them take me. Lance, that bounty could change your life. I don't need my life changed, and I sure as hell don't need blood money. Lance, they'll come back, or others will. Lance, the Krell pay well for information. Let them come. He started the hover truck, his jaw set. Lance, this is my land. I decide who stays and who goes. Lance. Back at the ranch, Kalara insisted on helping with the afternoon work. Jake protested, but she ignored him, following him to the cattle enclosures. Lance. The modified bovines were massive creatures, their hides adapted to reflect the harsh sunlight. She watched as Jake checked their health monitors, his movements practiced and efficient. Lance, you care about them, she observed. The animals, they're my responsibility. Lance, I bring them into this world, I make sure they're treated right. The Krell would say that makes you weak. Lance, they call anything that doesn't serve a purpose. The Krell are bastards, present company excluded. Lance. She almost smiled. I'm not Krell. My people fought them for 3 generations. Lance. And lost. Yes, the word was bitter. We lost everything. Our worlds, our fleets, our future. I'm one of maybe 1,000 survivors scattered across the galaxy, all of us hiding, all of us knowing that eventually they'll find us. Lance. Jake finished with the cattle and turned to face her fully. Then stop running. What? You heard me. Lance. Stop running. Stay here, Lance. Help me work this ranch. We'll figure out the rest as it comes. Lance. You don't understand what you're offering. The Krell won't stop. Lance. They'll send ships, soldiers, hunters. Everyone around me dies. Lance. Everyone around you dies because you keep moving, leaving trails, never staying long enough to build defenses. Out here, we dig in. Lance. We prepare. We fight if we have to. Lance. One human rancher and one wounded Valorian against the Krell Empire. Those are terrible odds. I've faced worse. He started walking back toward the house. Lance. Besides, you're thinking too small. This isn't just about you and me. Lance. This is Dust Ridge. We're a community. Lance. Folks out here look after each other. Over the next 3 days, Kalara learned the rhythm of ranch life. Lance. Her ribs healed as she'd predicted. A Valorian physiology knitting bone and tissue with remarkable speed. Lance. She helped Jake with the morning feeding, learned to maintain the hydroponic systems, and even assisted with repairing a damaged section of fence on the eastern boundary. But at night, she stood watch, her enhanced senses scanning the horizon for the telltale signs of Krell approach. Ships moving through the upper atmosphere, ground vibrations that didn't match local wildlife patterns. Lance. Energy signatures that shouldn't exist on a backwater colony. On the 4th day, Jake took her into Copper Springs. Lance. The settlement was small, maybe 200 permanent residents, with another 100 scattered across the surrounding ranches and mining claims. Lance. The main street featured a trading post, a medical clinic, a bar called the Red Dust Saloon, and a comm station that connected to the wider galactic network. People stared as they walked. Lance. Kalara's violet skin and silver scars marked her as unmistakably alien, and news of the Valorian genocide had reached even this remote corner of space. But Jake walked beside her with his head high, nodding to neighbors as if nothing was unusual. Lance. They stopped at the trading post, where an older woman named Betty Chen ran the counter. She looked Kalara up and down with sharp eyes. Lance. So you're the one causing all the fuss, Betty said. I apologize for any trouble my presence has caused. Wasn't talking about you, girl. Lance. Talking about the idiots who think they can collect bounties in my town. She turned to Jake. Had 3 more prospectors come through yesterday asking questions? Lance. Sent them packing, but they'll be back with friends. How many friends are we talking about? Jake asked. Hard to say. Lance. But the Krell bounty went up. 20,000 credits now. Lance. That kind of money attracts serious hunters. Kalara felt her stomach sink. Lance. I should leave tonight. Put distance between myself and this place. And go where? Betty challenged. Lance, you got a ship? Credits? Lance. Contacts? Or you just planning to wander the desert until someone picks you up? I won't let innocent people suffer because of me. Little late for that, honey. Lance. The moment you crashed here, you became our problem. And out here, we handle our own problems. Bass. Betty pulled out a data pad. Now, I've been making some calls. Lance. Got some old military contacts from back when I served. There's a safe route to the outer rim, but it'll cost. Lance. And it'll take time to arrange. Jake leaned against the counter. Lance. How much time? 2 weeks, maybe 3. Got to coordinate with smuggler networks, arrange false identities, the whole 9 yards. Lance. Can we hold out that long? Depends on how serious the hunters are. But I'm betting Jake Morrison's not the only stubborn rancher on Dust Ridge who's got opinions about bounty hunters. Lance, she was right. Over the next week, the community mobilized in ways Kalara had never seen. Lance, ranchers set up coordinated sensor networks, sharing data across a private comm channel. The miners, despite their earlier hostility, agreed to report any suspicious activity. Lance, even the bar owner, a gruff man named Carlos, started stockpiling weapons and ammunition. "Why are you doing this?" Kalara asked Jake one evening as they watched the sunset from the ranch's porch. "Lance, I'm nothing to you. To any of you. Lance, you're someone who needs help. That's enough. It shouldn't be. Lance, humans don't have a reputation for altruism. Maybe you've been meeting the wrong humans." He handed her a cup of synthetic coffee. "Lance, my grandfather used to say that civilization isn't measured by how we treat the powerful. It's measured by how we treat the powerless. Lance, you came here with nothing, asking for nothing but a chance to survive. What kind of people would we be if we turned you away? Pragmatic ones, Lance. Smart ones, maybe, Lance. But we'd also be alone, and out here, alone gets you killed. Lance, the first hunter arrived on day 9. A sleek combat ship dropped out of orbit, its weapon systems active and scanning. Lance, Jake got the alert from Betty's network and immediately moved Kalara to a hidden shelter he'd built beneath the barn. It was cramped and dark, but the walls were lined with sensor-blocking material he'd salvaged from old mining equipment. Lance, "Stay here," he ordered. "Don't come out unless I give the all-clear signal. Let me fight with you." "No, Lance. This is my land. I'll handle it." Lance. He left before she could argue, sealing the shelter behind him. Through the thin walls, she could hear the ship landing, the hiss of hydraulics, the heavy footsteps of someone in powered armor. Lance. The hunter was Krell, a 7-foot warrior encased in black combat plating. Its voice boomed across the ranch yard. "Lance, human. We have detected Valorian biosignatures in this area. Lance, surrender the fugitive and you will be compensated. Resist and you will be eliminated." Lance. Jake stood in front of his house, arms crossed. "Don't have any fugitives here." Lance. "Just cattle and crops? Scans do not lie. The Valorian is within 500 meters. Lance. Your scans are wrong. Now get off my property." The Krell raised its weapon, a plasma cannon that could reduce Jake to ash in seconds. But before it could fire, a shot rang out from the hills to the north. Then another from the east. Lance. Then a third from the south. The ranchers had arrived. Lance. The Krell's shields flared as rounds impacted from multiple directions. It spun, trying to track the attackers, but they were spread out, using the terrain for cover. Lance. Jake dove behind a water trough as return fire scorched the air where he'd been standing. "Cease fire or I will destroy everything," the Krell roared. Lance. "Then I guess you won't be collecting that bounty," someone shouted back. Kalara recognized Betty's voice. Lance. The standoff lasted another tense minute. Then the Krell's comm crackled. Lance. It listened to something, cursed in its guttural language, and backed toward its ship. "This is not over, human." Lance. "The Empire does not forget. Neither do we," Jay called back. Lance. The ship lifted off, its engine scorching the red dirt. As it disappeared into the sky, the ranchers emerged from their positions. Lance. There were 6 of them, all armed, all grinning. "That was fun," Carlos said, slapping Jake on the shoulder. "It's been too long since we had a good standoff." Jake released Kalara from the shelter. She emerged blinking into the sunlight, staring at the assembled humans. "Lance, you risked your lives for me." Betty shrugged. "We risked our lives for what's right, Lance." Big difference. Part 3 continues now. That night, the community gathered at the Red Dust Saloon. Kalara sat in a corner booth with Jake, watching as ranchers and miners who'd been strangers days ago shared drinks and stories. The Corral hunters' departure had galvanized something in Copper Springs, a sense of unity that transcended the usual frontier independence. Carlos poured her a glass of something amber and potent. "To standing your ground," he toasted. "Lance." The others raised their glasses in agreement. Kalara didn't drink. Lance. She couldn't shake the feeling that the danger had only just begun. The Krell didn't retreat because of a few rifle shots. Lance. They retreated because they were regrouping, calling in reinforcements, preparing for a real assault. "They'll be back," she said quietly. "Probably," Jake agreed. "But we'll be ready." Betty slid into the booth across from them, her daypad glowing with incoming messages. "Lance. Got some news from my contacts. Good and bad, Lance." "Which you want first?" "Bad," Kalara said immediately. "Krell have put a priority flag on you, Lance. They're dispatching a hunter team, proper military unit. Expected arrival in 5 days, Lance. And the good news? I found you a ride off-world, Lance. Ship's called the Meridian Runner. Captain owes me favors from way back. She'll take you to the outer rim, no questions asked, Lance. But she can't get here for another 8 days. Kalara did the math. Lance. 3 days between the hunters arriving and her escape. 3 days of holding off a Krell military unit with nothing but a handful of ranchers and outdated weapons. Lance, I'll leave now, she decided. Find another way. Lance, I won't let you all die for me. Too late for that, Jake said. We already made our choice. Your choice is suicide. Maybe, Lance. But it's still our choice to make. He turned to Betty. What kind of numbers are we looking at? Intel suggests a squad. Lance. 12 Krell soldiers, full combat loadout, supported by a gunship. They'll hit hard and fast. Won't waste time with negotiations. Lance. Carlos whistled low. That's more firepower than we've got in the whole settlement. Then we need to be smarter, Jake said. Lance. We know this terrain. They don't, Lance. We use that. Over the next 2 days, Copper Springs transformed into a fortress. Lance. The ranchers moved their families to an underground shelter system originally built for tornado protection. They rigged the main approaches to town with improvised explosives using mining charges. Lance. They set up overlapping fields of fire from reinforced positions in the buildings. Kalara worked alongside them, her military training proving invaluable. Lance. She taught them Krell tactics, their standard assault patterns, their weaknesses. The Krell relied on overwhelming force and heavy armor, but they were predictable. Lance. They followed doctrine rigidly, which meant their movements could be anticipated. They'll deploy from the gunship in a standard diamond formation, she explained, drawing in the dirt. Lance. 2 fire teams of 6. 1 to suppress, 1 to advance. Lance. The gunship will provide air support, targeting any heavy weapons we bring out. So we don't bring out heavy weapons, Jake said. Lance. We make them think we're weaker than we are, draw them in close. then hit them from unexpected angles. That could work, but you need to understand what you're facing. Lance. Krell warriors are stronger than humans, faster, with armor that can shrug off most conventional rounds. You'd need concentrated fire to bring even one down. Lance. An old miner named Frank spoke up. We've got some plasma cutters in the equipment shed. Lance. Industrial grade. They're not weapons, but they'll cut through armor if you can get close enough. Lance. Close enough means within 5 meters, Kalara warned. The Krell won't let you get that close. Then we make them come to us, Betty said. Set up kill zones, funnel them into confined spaces where their armor becomes a liability instead of an asset. They worked through the night, refining the plan. Jake's ranch would be the bait. The Krell would expect Kalara to be there, would focus their assault on that location. While they were occupied, a strike team would attempt to disable the gunship, evening the odds. It's risky, Kalara admitted. Even if everything goes perfectly, people will die. People die anyway, Carlos said grimly. Lance. At least this way, we die standing up. On the 3rd day, the Krell arrived. Their gunship entered the atmosphere at dawn, a massive wedge of black metal bristling with weapons. Lance. It circled Copper Springs once, scanning, then vectored toward Jake's ranch. Kalara watched from the shelter beneath the barn, her hands clenched into fists. Lance. Through the sensor feeds Jake had rigged, she could see the deployment. 12 Krell warriors dropping from the gunship in perfect formation, their plasma rifles already tracking for targets. Lance. Jake's voice crackled over the comm. Remember, let them get close. Lance. Don't shoot until they're committed. The Krell advanced across the open ground between the landing zone and the ranch buildings. Lance. Their movements were precise, professional, each warrior covering the others as they moved. The gunship hung back, its weapon swiveling to track potential threats. Lance. The first explosion caught 3 Krell in its radius. The mining charge had been buried beneath a layer of red dirt, completely invisible. Lance. The blast threw the warriors back, their shields flaring and failing. 2 got up, their armor scorched but functional. Lance. The 3rd didn't move. The Krell response was immediate and devastating. Lance. The gunship opened fire, its cannons tearing apart the buildings where the detonator signal had originated. But those buildings were empty. Lance. The defenders had already fallen back to secondary positions. Jake triggered the 2nd set of charges, these ones positioned to collapse part of the barn. Lance. The falling debris created a choke point, forcing the Krell to either go around or climb over. They chose to go around, exactly as predicted. Lance. That's where the kill zone waited. 6 ranchers with plasma cutters positioned behind reinforced barriers. Lance. As the Krell rounded the corner, they opened fire. The industrial tools weren't designed for combat, but at close range they cut through armor like paper. Lance. 2 more Krell fell, but the rest adapted quickly, spreading out, using their superior firepower to suppress the defenders. Lance. Plasma bolts tore through barriers, forcing the ranchers to retreat. One didn't make it, a young miner named Danny who'd been laughing and joking just hours before. Lance. In the shelter, Kalara listened to the sounds of battle and felt her resolve cracking. These people were dying because of her. Lance. Because she'd crashed on their world, brought her war to their doorstep. She couldn't just hide while they sacrificed themselves. Lance. She unsealed the shelter and emerged into chaos. The ranch yard was a smoking ruin. Lance. Bodies lay motionless in the dirt. Human and Krell both. Lance. The gunship had moved closer, its weapons tracking for new targets. Kalara ran for the equipment shed where Frank had stored the mining explosives. Lance. She grabbed a pack of charges, programming them for remote detonation, then sprinted toward the gunship's position. The Krell spotted her immediately. Lance. "The Valorian," one of them barked. "Capture alive if possible." 4 warriors broke off from the main assault, converging on her position. Kalara dodged the first volley of plasma fire, her Valorian reflexes letting her move faster than the Krell anticipated. She threw the first charge, watched it stick to a warrior's chest plate, then detonated it before he could react. Lance. The explosion killed him and wounded another, but the remaining 2 closed in, and Kalara had run out of charges. Lance. She drew the knife Jake had given her, knowing it was useless against Krell armor, but unwilling to die without fighting. Then Jake was there, emerging from behind a shattered wall with a plasma cutter in each hand. Lance. He fired both simultaneously, the beams converging on a single Krell. The warrior's shields failed, then his armor melted, and he went down screaming. Lance. The last Carol raised his weapon, but Betty shot him from behind, her rifle cracking 3 times in quick succession. The warrior's helmet shattered and he collapsed. Lance. "The gunship," Kalara gasped. "We need to take down the gunship." Jake pointed to where Carlos and Frank were positioning something on the roof of the trading post. Lance. It looked like a mining drill modified with a makeshift barrel and targeting system. "Tell me that's not what I think it is," Kalara said. "Lance, if you think it's a drill converted into a railgun, then yeah, that's exactly what it is." The gunship sensors picked up the threat too late. The drill fired its tungsten bit, accelerating to hypersonic speed. Lance. It punched through the gunship's shields, through its armor, through its reactor core. Lance. The ship hung in the air for a moment, then exploded in a fireball that lit up the morning sky. The remaining Krell warriors, seeing their support destroyed and half their number dead or wounded, made a tactical decision. Lance. They retreated, falling back toward the burning wreckage of their ship, calling for evacuation. It never came. Lance. The destruction of the gunship had been broadcast on every Krell military frequency, and in a decision that surprised everyone, the Krell command determined that the loss ratio wasn't worth continuing the assault. Lance. They pulled back, leaving Copper Springs alone. For now. Lance. As the sun climbed higher, the defenders gathered in the town square. They'd won, but the cost was brutal. Lance. 7 dead, 12 wounded, buildings destroyed. Lance. Equipment ruined, but they'd stood against the Krell Empire and survived. Lance. Kalara stood apart from the celebration, staring at the body bags lined up outside the medical clinic. Jake found her there, his face streaked with soot and blood. Lance. "This is my fault," she said. "No, Lance. This is the Krell's fault. And it's our choice, Lance. Don't take that away from us. 7 people are dead because I crashed here. 7 people are dead because they chose to fight for what's right, Lance. That matters." She turned to face him. "The Krell will come back, Lance. Next time with more ships, more soldiers. They won't stop until I'm dead or captured, Lance. Then we'd better make sure they never get the chance." He took her hand. "Betty's contact arrives in 5 days, Lance. You'll get off-world, disappear into the outer rim. But until then, you're one of us, Lance. You're home." The word hit her harder than any plasma bolt. "Lance, Home. She hadn't had a home since the Krell destroyed her world. Lance hadn't dared to hope she ever would again. I don't deserve this, she whispered. Lance. Nobody deserves anything. We just get what we're willing to fight for. Part 4 begins now. Lance. The 5 days of waiting were the longest of Kalara's life. The town buried its dead with full honors, each body wrapped in the red dust of the planet they'd defended. Lance. She stood at Danny's grave, the young miner who died in the first exchange, and felt the weight of his sacrifice crushing her. Betty organized rotating watches, paranoid that the Krell would return before the Meridian Runner arrived. Lance. Every ship that passed through the upper atmosphere sent the settlement into high alert. But the Krell didn't come back. Lance. Intelligence suggested they were regrouping, preparing for a larger assault, but resource allocation debates within their command structure were buying Copper Springs time. Kalara spent her days helping rebuild. She couldn't change what had happened, but she could at least contribute to the recovery. She worked alongside Jake to repair the barn, her Valorian strength making short work of lifting beams that would have required multiple humans. Lance. You're good at this, Jake observed as they set a support post. The construction work. We had to rebuild often during the war. Lance. You learn quickly when the alternative is sleeping under open sky. Tell me about your world. Lance. Before the Krell. She paused, hammer in hand. No one had asked her that before. Lance. Most people wanted to know about the war, the destruction, the horror, but Jake wanted to know about life. Lance. It was beautiful, she said softly. 3 moons that created tides so complex you could spend a lifetime studying them. Lance. Cities that grew from living crystal, shaped by sound and light. We were artists, philosophers, engineers. Lance. We believed in harmony, in balance, and we were completely unprepared when the Krell came. Lance. How long did you fight? 73 years. 3 generations watching our numbers dwindle, our worlds fall, our hope die. Lance. By the end, we were just trying to survive long enough to matter, to make sure our existence meant something. Jake set down his tools. Lance, you're here. You survived. Lance, that's not nothing. Survival isn't purpose. Then find a purpose. Lance, help me run this ranch. Teach others how to fight. Lance. Build something new instead of mourning what's lost. You make it sound simple. It is simple, Lance. Not easy, but simple. Life keeps going whether you participate or not. Lance. Might as well participate. That night, Carlos threw another gathering at the Red Dust Saloon. Lance. It was smaller than before, marked by the empty chairs of those who died. But there was music, actual music played on instruments Kalara had never seen, and dancing, and laughter that felt defiant in its existence. Lance. Jake asked her to dance. She hesitated, uncertain of the customs, but he guided her through the steps with patient encouragement. Lance. They moved across the floor, and for a moment the war felt distant. The fear felt manageable. Lance. The future felt possible. I never learned your human dances, she admitted. Lance. You're doing fine. Better than fine, Lance. He smiled. You know, when you first crashed here, I thought you'd be gone in a day or two. Figured you'd patch yourself up and run. Lance. I should have. But you didn't. You stayed. Lance. You fought alongside us. You became part of this place. Lance. Is that what I am, part of this place? If you want to be. Before she could answer, Betty burst through the door, her expression grim. Lance, we've got a problem, big one. Lance. The music stopped. Everyone turned to look. Lance. Betty activated a holographic display from her datapad, showing a tactical scan of the surrounding space. 3 Krell cruisers just entered the system. Lance. They're not heading here directly, but they're deploying fighter wings to search the surface, looking for something specific. Lance. Looking for me, Kalara said. That'd be my guess. Lance. And they're being thorough. Scanning every settlement, every ranch, every mine. Lance. They'll reach Copper Springs in 36 hours. The Meridian Runner isn't due for another 3 days, Jake said. Lance. Can we move up the timeline? I'll try, but smugglers don't appreciate schedule changes. Best case, she arrives in 2 days. Lance. Still 12 hours after the Krell. Kalara felt the weight of every eye in the room. Lance. These people had already sacrificed so much. She couldn't ask them to face Krell cruisers. Lance. I'll turn myself in, she said quietly. End this before more people die. Like hell you will, Carlos snapped. Lance. We didn't fight off one Krell assault just to hand you over now. You can't fight cruisers. This isn't a squad of soldiers, Lance. This is orbital bombardment capability. They'll reduce Copper Springs to glass if they think I'm here, Lance. Then we make sure they don't think you're here, Betty said. She pulled up another display, this one showing a network of caves in the mountains 50 miles north. Lance. Old mine system, abandoned for 20 years. The radiation from the mineral deposits plays hell with sensors. Lance. You hide there, and the Krell will scan right past you. And when they scan the town and find Valorian DNA traces, Lance. My blood is on half the buildings from the battle. Frank, the old miner, spoke up. We burn it, Lance. Controlled fires, hot enough to denature any biological material. Scorch the whole battle site clean, Lance. It was a desperate plan, but desperation was all they had, Lance. The town mobilized immediately, setting incendiary charges at strategic points. They'd make it look like accident, a fire that got out of control during repairs. Lance. The Krell would see burned buildings, no biosignatures, and move on. Lance. Jake insisted on accompanying Kalara to the caves. Betty argued, pointing out that someone needed to stay and coordinate the defense if things went wrong. But Jake was adamant. Lance. She doesn't know the terrain. Doesn't know the cave system. Lance. She needs a guide. And if the Krell find you both, then we fight. Lance. Same as always. They left before dawn, taking a ground vehicle loaded with supplies. The journey north was tense. Every shadow potentially a Krell scout. Lance. But they reached the mountains without incident. The cave entrance was narrow, barely wide enough for the vehicle. Lance. Inside, the tunnels branched in a dozen directions, a maze of passages carved by water and mining equipment. Jake led them deep into the system, to a chamber where the mineral deposits glowed faintly in the darkness. Lance. We'll be safe here, he said, unpacking the supplies. The radiation will mask our heat signatures, and the rock is thick enough to block most scanning frequencies. Kalara explored the chamber, her enhanced vision letting her see details Jake missed. Lance. Old mining equipment rusted in corners. Water dripped from stalactites, creating pools that reflected the eerie glow of the minerals. Lance. This is where you'll stay until the runner arrives, Jake continued. I've got supplies for 5 days, comm equipment to coordinate pickup, and enough weapons to hold off a small assault. Lance, you're not staying. Yes, I am. Jake, if the Krell find us both here, Copper Springs loses its best defender. You need to go back. Lance. He sat down on a supply crate, his expression stubborn. I'm not leaving you alone in a cave for 3 days. I've been alone for months. Lance, I can handle 3 more days. That's not the point. Then what is the point? He stood, closing the distance between them. Glance. The point is that I care about what happens to you. The point is that leaving you here feels wrong. Glance. The point is that somewhere between you crashing into my desert and you fighting alongside my friends, this stopped being about duty and started being about something else. Lance. Kellara stared at him, her heart racing. Jake, you can't. I'm leaving. Lance. In 3 days, I'll be gone, and you'll never see me again. I know. Then why complicate things? Because some things are worth being complicated for. Before she could respond, his calm crackled. Lance. Betty's voice came through, distorted by the cave interference. Jake, you there? Go ahead. Krell fighters just buzzed the town. Lance. They're starting their search pattern. We're lighting the fires now. Lance. Whatever you're doing, stay hidden. Copy that, Lance. We're in position. The next 36 hours crawled past. Jake and Kellara took turns keeping watch, monitoring the comm channels for updates. Lance. The Krell search was methodical. Each settlement scanned multiple times. Twice, fighters passed directly over their position, their sensors probing the mountains. Lance. But the radiation did its job. The Krell moved on, finding nothing. Lance. They're leaving the sector, Betty reported on the second day. Looks like they bought it. Lance. No Valorian signatures detected. Kellara allowed herself to breathe. And the town? Burned pretty good, but nothing we can't rebuild. Lance. Again. Betty's voice softened. The runner's captain just made contact. Lance. She'll be in orbit in 24 hours. You'll have a tight extraction window, but she can get you out clean. Lance. Thank you, Kellara said, for everything. Thank Jake. Lance. He's the one who wouldn't give up on you. After the call ended, Kellara turned to Jake. Lance. You heard her. 1 more day? Then what? Then I disappear. Glance. Become someone else. Start over on some rim world where the Krell have never heard of me. Glance. Sounds lonely. It's survival. It's existing. Not the same as living. Glance. She wanted to argue, to explain that living was a luxury she couldn't afford. But looking at him in the glow of the cave minerals, she couldn't find the words. Lance. Instead, she crossed the distance between them and kissed him. Lance. Part 5 begins now. The Meridian Runner dropped out of hyperspace exactly on schedule. A battered freighter that had clearly seen action in every conflict of the past 3 decades. Lance. Its captain, a human woman named Lisa Hayes, gave them a 2-hour window for extraction. Jake and Kellara made their way back to Copper Springs under cover of darkness. Lance. The town looked worse in person than it had sounded over comm. The entire eastern quarter was scorched black, buildings reduced to skeletal frames. Lance. But the people were already rebuilding, working by floodlight to clear debris and lay foundations. Betty met them at the edge of town. Lance. Shuttle's waiting at the landing pad. Captain Hayes wants you aboard in 30 minutes. Kellara nodded, but her feet felt rooted to the ground. Lance. Leaving meant safety, but it also meant abandoning the first place that had felt like home since the destruction of her world. "I need to say goodbye," she said. "Lance, we figured. Folks are gathered at the saloon. The Red Dust Saloon was packed, Lance. Every defender who'd survived the Krell assault was there, along with families, miners, ranchers who'd come from homesteads dozens of miles away. They'd brought food, what little they could spare, and turned it into a feast, Lance." Carlos thrust a drink into Kalara's hand. "To the toughest Valorian this side of the core worlds." "To Copper Springs," Kalara countered. "Lance, the toughest humans anywhere." They drank and ate and traded stories of the battle. Someone played music. Children who'd hidden in the shelters ran between the tables, their laughter a reminder of what they'd all fought to protect. Frank approached her, his weathered face serious. "Glance, I made you something." He handed her a small medallion carved from local stone. "It's not much, but it's got a piece of Dust Ridge in it, Lance. So you don't forget where you came from." "I could never forget this place," Kalara said, her voice thick with emotion. "Good, Lance. Because we won't forget you either." As the party wound down, Kalara found herself on the saloon's porch with Jake, Lance. The stars were brilliant overhead, unobscured by light pollution or atmosphere haze. "I don't want to go," she admitted. "Lance, then stay. The Krell will come back. You know they will, Lance. But we'll be ready. And you'd be here to help us prepare, Lance. Jake, I can't ask you to keep risking your life for me. You're not asking. I'm offering, Lance." He took her hand. "These past 2 weeks, working alongside you, fighting beside you, they've meant something. You've meant something, Lance. I'm a refugee with no future and a death sentence hanging over my head. You're a survivor who's fought harder than anyone I've ever met. You're someone who could have run a dozen times but chose to stand instead, Lance. You're someone worth knowing, worth keeping around, Lance." Kalara looked out at the burned town, at the people working to rebuild it, at the red desert stretching endlessly under the starlight. "If I stay, the Krell will eventually find me. Lance, they always do. Then we'll fight them, together, Lance, as many times as it takes. You really believe we can win?" "I believe we can try, and that's enough, Lance." She thought about her people, scattered across the galaxy, alone and hiding. She thought about the 73 years of war that had taught her to never trust, never settle, never hope. And she thought about the rancher who'd offered her sanctuary when she had nothing, who'd stood beside her when she'd faced her enemies, who was asking her to stay when leaving was the logical choice. "The runner leaves in 15 minutes, Betty called from inside. Kalara looked at Jake, then at the medallion in her hand, then back at the stars. "Tell Captain Hayes I won't be needing passage," she said. Betty appeared in the doorway, eyebrows raised. "You sure about this?" "No, Lance. But I'm doing it anyway." Jake's face split into a grin. "Lance, really?" "Really. On one condition." "Name it. You teach me everything about running a ranch, Lance. Because if I'm staying, I'm pulling my weight. Deal." He pulled her into a hug, and for the first time since her world had burned, Kalara felt the tight knot of fear in her chest begin to loosen. "Lance." The Meridian runner departed without her, jumping back to hyperspace and leaving Copper Springs in peace. In the days that followed, Kalara threw herself into ranch work with the same intensity she'd once brought to combat. Lance. She learned to maintain the cattle's health monitors, to program the hydroponic systems, to repair equipment when it inevitably broke down. She also helped fortify the settlement, Lance. Her military training proved invaluable as they redesigned the town's defenses, creating overlapping fields of fire and redundant sensor networks. They couldn't stop a full Krell assault, but they could make it costly enough that the Empire might decide she wasn't worth the resources. Lance. Weeks turned into months. The Krell sent probes occasionally, automated drones scanning for Valorian biosignatures, but the precautions held. Lance. Kelara learned to mask her presence, to move through the settlement in ways that confused sensors, to become invisible when necessary. But she also learned to be visible. She attended town meetings, contributed to community decisions, celebrated when new families arrived and mourned when old-timers passed. She became known not as the Valorian fugitive, but as Kelara the rancher, Jake's partner, a defender of Copper Springs. Lance. 8 months after her arrival, she stood with Jake on a ridge overlooking his ranch, watching the sunset paint the red desert in shades of gold and crimson. The cattle grazed peacefully below. Lance. The hydroponic greenhouses glowed with artificial light. In the distance, Copper Springs was a cluster of lights against the gathering darkness. Lance. You ever regret it? Jake asked. Lance. Staying? Every day, she admitted. But I don't regret it enough to leave. That's honest. It's complicated. Lance. I'm still waiting for the other boot to drop, for the Krell to arrive in force. But I'm also building something here. Lance. We're building something, and that feels important. Lance. It is important. She leaned against him, feeling his warmth against the cooling evening air. You know, when I first crashed, when I offered to bear your children, I was desperate, Lance. It was the only currency I thought I had. And now? Now I'm still desperate, just in a different way, Lance. She turned to face him. I'm desperate to make this work, to prove that the Krell didn't destroy everything, Lance. That there's still room in the galaxy for people to choose kindness over profit, community over isolation. We're proving that every day. Are we, Lance? Or are we just delaying the inevitable? Does it matter? Even if the KL come tomorrow, we'll have had these months, Lance. We'll have built something real. That counts, Lance. A transmission alert interrupted them. Betty's voice came through Jake's comm. Lance. Got something on long-range sensors. Ship dropping out of hyperspace. Vector toward our system. Lance. Kelara's hand instinctively went to the weapon she now carried everywhere. Krell? Can't tell yet. Lance. Wrong size for a cruiser. Maybe a scout. Maybe a merchant vessel. Lance. They waited, tension building as the ship entered sensor range. Then Betty's voice came back, tinged with surprise. Lance. It's broadcasting Valorian identification codes. Kelara's breath caught. That's impossible. Lance. There are no Valorian ships left. Well, this one claims to be the Starfire, commanded by someone named Captain Dren. They're requesting permission to land and speak with any Valorian survivors in the area. Lance. It could be a trap, Jake said. It could be, Kelara agreed. Lance. But her hand was shaking. Lance. The Starfire had been one of the last evacuation ships to leave Valorian space. She'd thought it destroyed months ago. Lance. Tell them they have permission to land, but keep weapons ready. The ship that descended to Copper Springs' landing pad was small and damaged, its hull patched with mismatched plating. Lance. 23 Valorians emerged, all of them bearing the same haunted look Kalara saw in her mirror every morning. Captain Dren was elderly by Valorian standards, his purple skin faded with age. Lance. He approached Kalara with tears in his eyes. I didn't dare hope, he said. Lance, when we picked up the faint biosignature during our supply run, I thought it was sensor error. You've been searching for survivors? For 8 months, ever since we escaped the destruction, Lance. We found 12 scattered across 6 systems. You make 24, Lance. It's not an army, but it's a start. A start for what? For rebuilding, Lance. For survival. For proving that the Krell didn't win, Lance. He looked around at Copper Springs, at the humans gathering to watch. You've found sanctuary here. Lance, these people risked everything to protect me. Then their allies. Lance, we could use allies. Dren turned to Jake. My people are tired, human. Lance, we've been running for so long. If your community would shelter us, even temporarily, we could offer our services. It's engineering, medicine, agriculture, whatever you need. Jake looked at Kalara, then at Betty, then at the gathered crowd of ranchers and miners. I can't speak for everyone, but I'm willing to call a town meeting, let folks decide democratically. The meeting lasted 3 hours, Lance. There were concerns about resources, about drawing more Krell attention, about changing the character of the settlement. But in the end, the vote was nearly unanimous. Lance, Copper Springs would shelter the Valorian refugees. That night, as Jake and Kalara lay in bed in the ranch house, she couldn't stop smiling. Lance, what? He asked. I was just thinking about that first day, Lance, when I offered to bear your children in exchange for protection. And I said we don't do things that way out here. You were right, Lance. Out here, we do things better. We build community, Lance. We protect each other. We create family, not through obligation, but through choice, Lance. So does this mean you're finally going to stop waiting for everything to fall apart? No, I'll probably always be waiting for that, Lance. But I'm also going to keep building, keep fighting, keep choosing this place and these people, including you, Lance. Even though I'm a stubborn rancher who burns breakfast, especially because of that, she kissed him. Thank you, Jake Morrison, Lance, for taking me in when I had nothing, for standing beside me when I faced my enemies, Lance, for teaching me that survival isn't enough, that we can choose to live instead of just exist. Thank you for crashing into my desert. Best, worst day of my life. Outside, under the 3 moons that had risen over Dust Ridge, the Valorian survivors shared stories with their human hosts. Lance, in the wreckage of war and the shadow of empire, something new was growing. Not a restoration of what was lost, but a creation of what could be, Lance. Kalara fell asleep to the sound of laughter drifting through the window, human and Valorian voices mingling in the night air. The Krell would come eventually, Lance. There would be more battles, more sacrifices, more losses. But there would also be this, Lance. Community. Purpose. Lance. Home. And that, she thought as sleep claimed her, was worth fighting for.